Good evening and welcome to Talk of the Neighborhoods. I'm Joe Hesiler, your host, coming to you from the BNN Live studios, Eggleston Square, Jamaica Plain, where tonight on the Boston Neighborhood Network, well, all politics, as is our usual want. Tonight, a two-part show. First up, we continue our election 2014 coverage with yet another of the Democratic gubernatorial candidates. This one, Homeland Security expert and former Boston Globe columnist Juliette Kayyem joins us to talk about her bid for the Democratic nod. This past weekend, of course, a big event, a big weekend for Democrats, I should say, as they caucused across the state, selecting delegates to the National Convention. All gubernatorial candidates need to get 15% of the vote. Tonight, we'll find out how Juliette did. Then on the second half, we'll shift gears. One more look at last fall's mayoral election. Joining us, Gin Dumcius. He wrote a book about it. He is the news editor for the Dorchester Reporter, and his Kindle book can be bought, chronicling the rise of Marty Walsh. All that and more tonight on Talking the Neighborhoods. All right, we're back with Talking the Neighborhoods. I'm Joe Hesiler, your host tonight. Two-part show, and in this first half, we continue our coverage of election 2014. That's right, the mayoral election just ended, but the gubernatorial election and those of constitutional officers is running full steam, especially after this past weekend when the Democrats caucused across the state, determining delegates to their state convention. The significance, of course, that any candidate for major office needs 15% of the vote at the convention to get on the primary ballot. And tonight, one of those seeking to meet that threshold, and she's starting to generate some serious interest across the state. She's a former Patrick administration official, also with the Obama administration, the Department of Homeland Security, former Boston Globe columnist, which we love, journalists here. Juliette Kayyem joins us from Cambridge.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much for coming. Well, you get big points from me because, of course, I'm married to a wonderful woman, and she's the mother of our children. Yes. So I know you're a mother, so you get points for that. How many do you have? I have two.
Two, but, yeah. So I have a 12, a 10, and 8-year-old, and like many families, you know, we figure it out day by day. There's no finish line, I often say, but they're doing great, and I have an amazing husband who's learning to be an amazing. He's learning to be an amazing chef. He's decided, he has to cook now, and he's become an amazing chef.
But help us now. Help our viewers who may not be familiar with why you? Why why you? Why now? Why are you running for governor?
I mean, and this is part of what this process is to make the case. So I have, as you said, I'm a mother of 3 children. There are many parts of my career, but the two main ones are I started off as a civil rights attorney, working, hired out of law school by Assistant Attorney General Deval Patrick to break open doors and to level the playing field, as government should do, because when everyone has access to the table, amazing things happen. So I have a strong progressive background, whether it's comprehensive immigration reform or Title IX and women's rights. I also take seriously our communities, our safety and security, resiliency, building stronger, and that's related to whether the threat is climate change or two brothers who appear on April 15th, or guns, or it's an economic downturn. It is about my capability as the only candidate who's had senior executive service in both state and federal government to make the pieces work, to cut across the boundaries of whether, you're in state government, whether it's different secretariats or working with 351 cities and towns, and finding the solutions that work for everyone. And it's those kinds of skills and a commitment to making Massachusetts the most welcoming, because I'm a daughter of immigrant family. I mean, that matters to me, but also the most prepared and connected state, and the best in the years to come.
But this is a big leap.
It is.
You've never even been elected to office before, and here you are seeking the highest office in this state.
Right.
That's a big step.
It is a big step, and people will learn about me. I don't do suicide missions or ego trips. We have a plan, and it began this weekend with the caucuses. We're just thrilled about how I did. But the role of a governor is to make government work for citizens and to harness the collective skills and passions of everyone throughout the state to move Massachusetts forward. And I jumped in. If I gamed the system, I would not have jumped in. But people seem really receptive to maybe my energy, my enthusiasm, and maybe just the sense that this is a fight for the future of our party and the future of the state. There is no there's no next in line. I mean, we all are in it to convince voters, and in particular to convince the sort of backbone of the Democratic Party, those who would be involved with the caucuses, that the debate is good for the state and for the party, that we cannot decide too early, that you cannot game the system, and let the voters decide.
Well, you worked for Deval Patrick.
Yes.
How did he do? Did he do a good job? Do you want to replace him because you think you can do better? You think he didn't do well enough? You think what? I'm
not going to be the candidate.
Did he do a good job?
Yes. Period. And I've been to 44 other states, right, in my job working for President Obama. He steered us through very difficult times. I mean, remember, he sort of got handed the recession, and he didn't blame the immigrants, and he didn't blame the unions, and he steered us together. Everything perfect? Absolutely not. People who want perfection should not read the newspaper. Things happen, right? And so the way I look at the next governor is, first of all, there's no finish line for the state that we are always becoming, right? We're always getting better. It's not like Deval Patrick finishes and we hand it to the other team. It's the obligation of the next generation to just keep pushing. And so are there things that I would focus on that he didn't? Because that's who I am, certainly. Criminal justice reform, climate change adaptation. I oversaw the National Guard here. I have a strong commitment to the military and our veterans. But I never look back and say, oh, I could have done it better, or someone else could have done it better. It's just a constant push. You're never done, and I think people accept that.
And you're not daunted by your opponents? Of course, the Attorney General of Massachusetts, the State Treasurer. Now, I'm not suggesting that you don't have something, maybe a lot more than they do.
No, it's fair. It's a fair question.
And of course, a lot of people saying that this may be the Republicans make a comeback in Massachusetts.
It might be.
You're not daunted.
No. I mean, if I were, I wouldn't be in it. Because this state has a history of giving people a chance, people who are on the outside. Look, I know government. I did day one with this governor. I did day one with this president. It's not like I woke up one day and said, oh, wouldn't it be neat to be governor? I know how to make government work, sometimes in crisis, which is important. I mean, that's when we look to a mayor, or governor, or a president, but also to build stronger, whatever the challenges may be. So I could have gamed the system from the outside, but look, this state has been receptive. I'm working really hard because the caucuses are here and to build them. And over time, I represent a generational shift that's not reflected with those candidates. I know government, but I'm not a creature of Beacon Hill. And all of those are parts of what I want to talk to people about. And on the other side is Charlie Baker. We need a strong, and if not, the best Democrat to go against Charlie Baker. And I believe I am her. I mean, I believe, just given the generational shift that I represent, my experiences, which are so different than Charlie Baker's, and my capacity to play, to play in this game if I need to, sort of makes me, ready for it.
Here's your chance. Well, what would you do with the situation with DCF?
Yes, the moment it happened, have called for this up and down review. And the reason why is not because, we're going to find the perfect solution, but in government, as I say, government can always get better. We need to find out what the problem is. Is it just money? Is it the head of it? Is it a systemic problem that needs a bureaucratic fix? And solve the problem permanently, because this is not about politics. It's not about a particular person. It is about the children and that we lost a child. And I will say, as a Democrat, we should be so angry when this happens, or when websites fail, healthcare. Not at Governor Patrick. We should be angry because then people lose confidence in the social services or the progressive programs that we believe in as Democrats. And so, but that is what. Look, I want to learn. I want to fix. And I want to fix for a long-term solution. And you can only do that by getting out of the sort of noise of politics and taking a deep dive into a program that clearly, day after day, we are learning is not satisfying our children. We want a good fix, and one that essentially just helps our children.
Well, always a tough issue. Been a tough issue for many years. Of course, anytime you're talking about removing children from homes or leaving them there, there's never.
Yeah. I mean, that is, that's the problem is, one of the things is there's so many good people working at DCF, and I think we have to take a pause and say, this is a hard job. I mean, as you just said, these are tough jobs, and judgment calls are being made all the time. And, we're making too many wrong ones, or too many mistakes are being made. But we need to fix them for the children, but we also need to fix them for to protect a program that is doing a fundamental service for our families and children that are just, are struggling and need the compassion of a state service like DCF.
Ready to make those hard choices, though, if it does
call
for letting people go? I'm thinking of that. I mean, you're talking about the Obamacare rollout.
Yeah,
the health exchange had been working great here, but
right. So look, I mean, let's be angry and then let's fix it. I don't get abandoning the Affordable Care Act. It seems to me we have tens of thousands of people who are getting health care services. We will get this fix, and we should be angry in the process because people are suffering. It is, even Therese Murray said today, it's her biggest issue with constituent services. Look, I have worked mostly in a male field with police officers and firefighters and the military, and so yes, I will fire. I have fired when people are what we call dereliction of duty. But no matter what it is, I know how to do that. That's what needs to be done. But that's if that happens, that's not. It's rarely the person, right? It is part of a culture or a program that needs to be fixed from the top down. And so I welcome an independent review. I don't want to second guess it. I want to see what they come up with and learn. I mean, that's what it means to get better as government. If a mistake happens, you figure out what it was, and then you move forward and put those fixes into place.
Oh, and here's something for you because, of course, you worked Homeland Security. Last week, your former colleague at the Globe, I don't know if he worked there when you were, Tom Keene was here. He was an old friend of mine as well.
Never met him. We actually overlap, but the weird thing about columnists is you actually never meet each other.
Not in this day and age, especially. It's all
right. It's all you just like email
reality.
it in.
But we had, of course, he had an interesting column, and you working in Homeland Security, you be interested to hear how you weigh on Edward Snowden. Hero, national hero, or traitor?
Oh, I mean, I'm gonna reserve judgment on that.
It's sorry to put you on the spot, but
people ask me about this. It's not about Snowden. It's just not. I mean, and the fact that it's about him means that we're missing the point. President Obama should have had a rigorous legal system over any surveillance program. The fact we didn't and I have said this publicly, was wrong. And the fact that we are now, and we're ending much of the systems, is right. I don't like making Snowden a hero or a villain, because to me, it's not about him. It is about the powers that we use as a government, that sometimes we have to use as a government to protect our citizens. And I was in Homeland Security here.
Any hint that this widespread surveillance was going on when you were there?
No. I was what we call a consumer of intelligence. So we would get a briefing every morning in Secretary Napolitano's sort of secure area. And look, Homeland Security, our briefings were about intelligence. It was also about the weather, right? I mean, it's going to be snowing.
We've got a problem.
Exactly. There's and hurricane season, but we know that here. And then we would assess where we would put resources based on those intelligence briefings. So I had no idea. I wasn't a creature of the intelligence apparatus, just receiving it. But I will, tell you that when I was the governor's Homeland Security advisor, I did serve on the Joint Terrorism Task Force just by title. I worked with the Boston Police on a program called Bridges, which was for community outreach to communities that felt harassed by federal law enforcement, because I'm a big believer in community policing, whether it's terrorism or crime or drug use, that I think our neighborhoods are the most important defense.
There's a perfect, our primary audience is here in the city of Boston, but another horrific shooting, appears to be accidental shooting of a 9-year-old boy by his brother. Of course, that's one thing, but we started the year off with an incredible number of what appears to be gang shootings. Well, okay, well, you're the governor. What are you going to do about it, or is there anything that can be done?
There is. I mean, so first of all, it's supporting our mayors, and so I've worked and talked with so many of these mayors, because that's what, when you're in state government, that's what you need to do. And so what do they need? Okay, so of course they need resources for public safety. They need regional approaches to solving crime, because crime, like weather, does not know borders. I was just earlier tonight, you said, this is my last event of the evening, but earlier tonight, I was up north in Andover, and I met a police chief there, and he said, it's heroin. Heroin coming from New Hampshire. It's just crazy, right? So we need to support public safety in terms of being able to get past home rule and to work with surrounding jurisdictions, figure out what's going on. But also it's about gun control, and it's not just what laws can we place. It is about supporting community efforts for those who choose to have guns to be more responsible. I am for stronger legislation. I'm for, I've said publicly, the once-a-month purchases. I'm for ending all of the loopholes that we should get registered, the semi-automatic weapon ban. This seems to me, and I'm not standing out on a limb here, 90% plus of our citizens believe that. But also we need to talk about sort of rational behavior as a gun owner. Get a lockbox. Don't clean your guns with the kids around. I mean, these are weapons of violence. And if you choose to have one, understand what you're bringing into your home. Because while Newtown is horrible, most kids die from guns in the home. We know that. The statistics are clear.
Yeah. And of course, there's a lot of other things going on. Of course, always, especially here in the city, the percentage of local aid has dropped dramatically as, of course, following the recession and starting to dig our way out of it. Now, Juliette Kayyem raised taxes so we could have some more local aid, so we can do something about these problems?
So I don't like when Republicans take no tax pledges, and I don't like when Democrats do, because the obligation of the next governor is to make sure that we are prepared for whatever comes our way. The governor inherited a recession we did not know was coming. I may, if I'm governor, inherit a fantastic economic time in which we can begin to lower the sales tax and reinvest in the various taxes and reinvest in our communities. So let me tell you what I do know the mayors want. They want more local aid, which I am committed to, because it goes into our schools and infrastructure. But what does a mayor want? What does this mayor want? Any mayor want? They want to increase their tax base. by getting businesses to come into their city, getting residents to move into their city so that they can get both property and business taxes. And that is part of an economic plan of getting companies to invest in not just Boston, but throughout our state. Not view Boston as the center of all centers.
With what, tax breaks?
Of course. Yeah. I would absolutely, the idea that Democrats don't believe in tax breaks is for business. No, I would have strong clawback provisions, and I would pick and choose wisely. I have recommended, when it comes, I'm into risk reduction, and I get nervous about climate change. I have recommended in my proposals a green bank. This is what Governor Cuomo has done up in New York, other governors throughout the state, which would give tax breaks to companies that are invested in green energy, and not just new sources of green energy, but also distribution, transportation, storage, and make Massachusetts a mecca. It employs our people, it creates a business-friendly environment, and it's good for the world, and that's a good thing.
Now, didn't Governor Patrick do that up in Devon's, and it fell flat? I'm playing devil's advocate here.
And I will push back on this notion. Look, government and the private sector do not bat 1,000, and people know that. But the overall investments this governor made in energy and in green energy have made us the leader in this issue. And those are the kinds of continuing investments we need to make, and it's good for the world, right? I mean, this is where, you don't just give, I'm going to give tax breaks to businesses. Or you think about what kind of state we actually are. And the other thing on tax breaks, Republicans tend to say about Democrats, we're not business friendly. So, and that's just ridiculous, because what is business friendly? Business friendly is a workforce that's prepared for the companies that we can get here. As I said, we're in competition with 49 other states, let alone a global economy. An infrastructure that works. That is business friendly. Our investments in infrastructure, whether it's rail, our port enhancements.
We're positioned regardless.
We need to position ourselves so that the backbone of this state, whether it's regional transportation authorities, here's what's business friendly. Working broadband in Western Mass, that is business friendly. And the fact we don't have that yet means that the next governor has got to take that on, as this one did, create whether it's, all these new forms of broadband, I'm forgetting now the everyone briefs me so I forget, so microchips or whatever else as I fumble this one. But that is how we have to think about Massachusetts being business friendly.
We've got just a couple minutes left, and I don't mean to cut you short.
No.
15%. Can you meet that threshold? That's
okay.
You could be squeezed out here, despite all your efforts. You're obviously very bright and
thank you.
Well-spoken, talented, and a mother.
And a mother.
So you're going to get to that 15%.
Here's my line.
This is politics.
This is what we're working for. Yeah. And we had a good weekend. Yeah. That's all I'll say. We don't want to play the numbers games, but the notion that, let me say the good news. The Democratic Party, here's the storyline coming out of the weekend. Guess who won? The undecideds, right? We know that for a fact. Everyone's been reported that. That is good for me. It means that the party is not aligning behind any of these names. The party can sustain, oh my goodness, 2 women in the race, which now has become a bit of an issue. The party wants a lot of voices, and if I emerge as that voice, it is because I have been working very hard to galvanize the base.
Some suggesting that you're a bit of a spoiler,
For who?
Attorney General Coakley could walk into this, and hey, I know.
Listen, I read the pundits too. My husband tells me not to. Look, no one deserves to be governor. You got to work for it, and it's not about the chromosome. It is about the candidate. Relying solely on the fact that you're a woman, that is because you should be governor, is how we will lose this race. Period. The data is clear. The last election with the Attorney General and Scott Brown made that clear, and the elections in Boston and New York and LA and various other states, the notion that the women will galvanize behind the female candidate is not true. We are smarter than that.
You don't want to make some history here?
Become the LG? So, yeah, I would welcome her.
No.
I love the naysayers. Look, when you get into a race like this and you're me, every step of the way there's the naysayers, and I cross through that hoop, and then they create another one. But I am not. If I get out, it will be because I lost an election or because I could not convince the party that I was a viable candidate against Charlie Baker. None of those will be because there's another woman in the
Going
race.
through to the primary, though, this is you know, something you've wanted to do. You've obviously
we built for it. We built for it. We've got a strategy for the primary. It's new leadership. It is a new generational voice that's represented in this mayor. It's not just this mayor in Boston. It's look at the state now. I mean, you look at New Bedford, and you look at Salem, and you look at Pittsfield. I mean, there's all sorts of new voices emerging, and that's what I represent with background in both, you know, sort of a commitment to progressive politics and policies, as well as building a more prepared Massachusetts, whether the challenge is the economy or climate.
And voters aren't, you know, they've had a progressive governor for 8 years. They're not tired of it. Some people saying this is the year that the Republicans make that comeback. Charlie Baker.
Right. He's a formidable candidate. I mean, he is. And look, I mean, what I say to Democrats who believe that or whatever is, you know, we're not going back, right? I mean, you know, the idea that Deval Patrick is done and then you hand it to the other team. If you like what Deval Patrick has done, even with mistakes, even if you would tinker at the edges, whatever, there's no finish line. You just keep pushing, and it's not, you know, and the way the policies of our parties, the policies of the candidates are fundamentally different. And if I go head-to-head with Charlie Baker, that will be very, very clear.
Well,
but that's a long way away. I'm just getting through the caucuses. But I want people to think of me that way.
First things first, but
I know.
You're feeling good?
Feel good.
Well,
feel good. And because you're my last event of the night, I feel even better.
You're feeling even better.
Yeah.
Juliette Kayyem, running for governor as Democrat, one of 5. This is a very interesting race. Nice enough to come by tonight and join us here on Talking the Neighborhood.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thanks for coming by. All right, we're back with Talking the Neighborhoods. I'm Joe Hesiler, your host, and in this half, we'll take a look back at the race that was, of course, what race, the one everyone is still talking about, the race for mayor in 2013 that saw Marty Walsh, Representative Marty Walsh, become the mayor of the city of Boston. And for those following politics, a lot of plots, subplots, stories behind the stories. And joining me in this half, a man who chronicled a lot of that and wrote a book about it. He is the news editor for the Dorchester Reporter, and now author. Gin Dumcius joins us from Dorchester, and thanks so much for coming by.
Thanks for having me.
And the way to City Hall. Well, that's
that's the title. We labored over that one a little bit.
Yeah, let's see how we start, because you know, many people say you were the one that broke the story that Mayor Menino wasn't going to run for re-election. Of course, those that follow politics for a long time always think of that Boston Herald story that said Mayor Peter Lucas, Mayor White will run, and of course the next day he announced that he wouldn't. But tell us the story behind the story, how you found out that Mayor Menino would not be running for re-election.
The story was on my mind that night.
I bet it was.
The person who actually broke the story was David Bernstein, formerly of the Boston Phoenix, that had just folded, and he would eventually land at Boston Magazine. Right. He's there right now. And so he's the one who put it out there at first. I think it was around 5:30 on March 27th. And what I do in my ebook is I reconstruct that night and kind of what everybody was going through. That's kind of my scene setter and how I open up. But Bernstein put out a tweet basically saying, you know, unconfirmed. I'm hearing, nobody will deny that the mayor will not be running again. And I was on my way to a school committee meeting that night. I was just going to swing through, you know, take a look at the agenda, spend maybe a half hour there, and then zip back to my home. And I saw the tweet, and I immediately went up to the mayor's press office there on the 6th floor. And you know, the phones were going off the hook. You know, the reporters kept. Yeah, I mean,
everybody else saw that tweet too.
Exactly.
Guess what?
So it's and the mayor was already. I think he was long gone at that point, and already on his way home to Hyde Park.
Yeah.
where he would start to work on the speech that he would deliver the next day. And it was just kind of a feverish few hours of trying to work sources, of trying to get folks to confirm, because all these rumors were flying around. I mean, Councilor Matt O'Malley was having a fundraiser that night at the Vault, a few blocks away, and everybody was on the phone, basically, kind of scrolling through Twitter. Trying to see updates, and Bernstein was able to confirm around 8:30 that yes, the mayor would be announcing the following day at Faneuil Hall that he would not be running again. And a little bit after that, Dorchester Reporter, we got 3 sources confirming that. So, and what I had done was a couple months ago in December, when the mayor was still in the hospital, I had written a story. It was just kind of just to have just in case, since Menino won't run.
To have in the file drawer, the can.
And with that, I went over to the Last Hurrah bar at the Omni Parker House.
Where did I put that?
I brought out my laptop, I pulled it up. I went to the Parker House, the Omni Parker House, because they had free Wi-Fi, and I also hadn't had dinner at that point, so that was a good place to have dinner. And pulled up the story, tweaked it a little bit, made a couple of changes to make it more date specific, and just put it up online. So I believe we were the first newspaper to have a story up online about it. And I remember just kind of sitting back and at some point eating dinner and then seeing on the monitors the TVs flashing the news, and everybody at the bar was kind of stopped what they were doing and kind of watched the news unfold for a minute or two, and it was just kind of, I had to sit down and just kind of watch history happen. That was the amazing part, and that's kind of really, I think, when I really started thinking, like, this is going to be an epic, historic year that hasn't happened in 20 years.
Well, and something I was going to say, 20 years ago, how old were you? Let's see, you were probably...
in 1993, I was in 3rd grade. So that
third grade, so truly a historic moment for you. But, just so our readers know, and again, the book is called The Way to City Hall. It's an e-book. It's on Kindle. And you can purchase it by going to Amazon, by going to Barnes & Noble, what was the other one, iApple?
It's on the iBook store and on Apple. If you just put in This Way to City Hall or my last name, Dumcius, you should be able to call it up. Or you can Google it and it'll show up on Google as well.
Well, anyway, so what and then there's the cover of it. What made you decide, at what point did you say, this might make an interesting book?
It kind of formed in my head, and I kind of played around with it for I think a few months or so, and I decided, this is an epic race. And what I did in those kind of the few months was go back into the Globe archives and kind of, because I wanted to get a sense of what was written 20 years ago, 30 years ago during those races. And what struck me was that there wasn't really a lot of collected material about the Menino Jim Brett showdown in '93. There wasn't really a lot of material on the Mel King and Ray Flynn showdown in '83. So I felt, to leave something behind for history would be nice, because what we do as reporters can be ephemeral. I mean, we put it out especially on the web, especially on Twitter.
Yeah. Here today, gone tomorrow.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
So so I wanted something you could hold in your hands, even if it was on a Kindle or a Nook or whatever e-reading device folks have nowadays. Or even as a PDF, and the Dorchester Reporter was I mean, they've always given me a lot of freedom, and they said, you know what, if this is what you want to do, then go forth. And it was from then on, it was really juggling both the daily output along with kind of trying to take the long view and trying to go behind the scenes, right, with as many campaigns as possible.
Well, and I want to ask you more about that. Again, Gin Dumcius is the news editor for the Dorchester Reporter, does some of the, I have to say, finest political reporting in the city, and bar none. That includes the dailies. His stuff can be seen on .news.com, I believe, is the, and on a regular basis, if you follow politics, you got to read Gin Dumcius. But you also want to pick up this book, and it's an e-book, and it's called The Way to City Hall, and again, it's on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and through the Apple Store, or you can Google Gin Dumcius. Okay, now as fascinating the story, trying to figure out what Menino was doing and what went into his decision. For me, at least, as a political junkie like everybody else, is what all those other people were doing, because everybody, and as it turned out, we ended up with 12 candidates, was looking at this race saying, can I get in this race? Can I win this race? Tell us about that.
Well, what happened on the day that Menino, or the word leaked out that Menino wasn't going to be running again, John Connolly was actually...
had already announced.
He had already announced,
yeah.
But I think he quickly grasped what it meant, and he actually found out through somebody tipping him off, saying, the Globe editor is sitting in the mayor's lobby waiting to go in, and a Herald reporter is waiting in after him, and Connolly immediately realized, they must be going in for only one reason. That's Menino telling them that, or at least starting to give him a hint that he's not running again. And he and Connolly kind of, he immediately grasped what it meant for his campaign, because he wouldn't be dealing one-on-one with someone. He would be dealing with a multi-candidate field, completely changing his next 6 months, or 8 to 9 months. And what he did is that he sat down with Matt O'Malley, tried to lock up the West Roxbury area, saying, listen, I need your support, councillor. And he also called an emergency meeting of his campaign team down on Belgrade Avenue. And a lot of the other candidates were doing the same thing. Marty Walsh was up at the State House in his office, and he started making phone calls immediately to Frank Baker, the city councilor, who they both went to St. Margaret's Elementary School from Dorchester. Savin Hill, and then and Joyce Linehan, Dorchester activist, and now in his administration. So there was a lot of plotting and folks trying to get plans down that night, because they realized their lives would change.
Well, did you ever suspect that there would be that many candidates, people giving up their seats that they had worked at for years? Rob Consalvo, Michael Ross. Well, Dan Connolly didn't have to give up the DA's post, but making it a run. Felix Arroyo. The field turned out to be an incredible field. And how were you able to kind of capture the flavor of that in your book?
Well, a lot of that was just spending time on the trail. I was not the reporter who spent the most time on the trail. I think actually, I think the Globe's Wesley Lowery was the one who hit it so many more events than I did, but and he's over at the Washington Post now. But I tried just to get a feel of the on the ground campaigns and how they were doing. And that meant many weekends spent all across the city. And kind of learning about the different areas of the city, learning about East Boston, learning about Hyde Park, places that I would not normally be seen as the Dorchester Reporter news editor.
At what point did you get a sense, or did you get a sense that the field was narrowing? I think right up to the point of the preliminary election, no one really knew who might end up on top. Did you get some sense of it? Did you get some sense of the momentum, at least that Marty Walsh was building, and ultimately John Connolly, who were the finalists?
Oh, and I think there was a sense among, if you were watching the field organizations and you're watching who was raising money, who was doing well in the polls, there was a sense that John Connolly was likely to make it into the final two. Marty Walsh, because of his organization, they seemed to have a presidential level campaign in terms of organization, and Charlotte Golorici while her campaign was not well run, there was still a sense that she was gaining momentum in those last few weeks. And there was also Dan Connolly. He was who ended up being the 4th place finisher, and a large part of that was because he had the most money. I think he started with $1 million in the bank. Right. So on the night of the preliminary, I wrote 3 different stories. One was John Connolly winning Another was Marty Walsh winning, and the third was Charlotte Gullah-Ritchie winning, and then kind of setting up all the different variables that could go into play.
Well, and a lot of work going into that. Of course, as it turned out, you know, in some ways, and of course, not having the benefit of history, being a young man, this was actually relatively sedate, or it seemed like it on the surface. Was there more friction below the surface between these campaigns, especially in the final, Walsh and Connolly? Is there stuff that we didn't see that didn't really get reported?
I mean, I think most of the campaigns really disliked Charlotte Gullah-Ritchie's campaign. There was kind of a unanimous dislike because they felt it was so poorly run, and they were very frustrated with it because she was, despite her gaining in the polls. I think there was some dislike among the other candidates of Dan Connolly, and in the same way that in the Republican presidential primaries, a lot of the candidates disliked Mitt Romney. Yeah. I think a lot of it was just tied to the money, and he did not have the same relationship with the other candidates. You know, Felix Arroyo knew Marty Walsh. John Connolly knew most of the candidates. Mm-hmm. They all knew each other, with Dan Connolly being an exception. And I think above the surface, most of it was pretty cordial because each one's real.
We're used to the kind of sharp elbow, bare knuckles. Are those days past?
No, I think it was unique in this race, largely because each person thought, like, well, if I'm going to win, I'm going to need the support of some of the others. So there was a sense of like, well, I better not anger the other sides too much because I might need them in the final election.
Well, again, Gin Dumcius is the news editor for the Dorchester Reporter. Great reading, and his new book is called The Way to City Hall. It's an e-book. It can be purchased by going on to Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, the Apple Store. You can find it anywhere if you Google it. And what's been the response? People treat you a little differently now?
I get all the best tables now. No, it's just it's also weird seeing the word author in front of your name. I don't feel like an author, but you know,
something you always wanted to do though.
Yeah, I think since I've been a little kid, I was always making magazines and comic books for my father and mother. So that was always something that was in the back of my mind. But
well, you're a terrific writer, and I give you a lot of credit for doing it, especially trying to juggle doing that and doing your regular job. All right, now let's turn. We've got just a couple minutes left. Let's turn to the Walsh administration. How are they doing? Depending upon who you talk to, people say, oh, it's taking them a while to kind of make some changes there. And of course, other people say, oh, you know, you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let's just, you know, and in fact, I ran into, you know, a very high-ranking former administration official with Menino. I said, are you retired? And he said, no. They came to me and they virtually begged me to stay. And I said, I don't blame them, because this particular guy was terrific, and I won't mention his name. But how are they doing? What's your take on it?
Well, I think the Mayor Walsh's mantra is one day at a time, and that's really what they're
for more reasons than one. But
right, exactly, yep. But I think that's really, they're taking that to heart, and I think for him especially, he was coming from a place at the State House where, you know, you're a legislator, you're one person out of a few hundred in terms of putting the budget together. And then you go from that to being the main person who pulls all the levers and is in charge of a $2 billion budget. You know, that's going to be a culture shock. And I think he's kind of settling into the role. You know, I've seen him a few times behind the scenes. I think, you know, he's kind of slowly trying to grasp. There's been a few times I notice he's nervous because he wears it on his sleeve. You know, he can't. Everything's out there emotionally. But it seems like a lot of times he has the trust in his people, in the people he's hired, that he feels that they're doing okay. And again, it's gonna take a while. They got to find their sea legs, but they're doing okay so far.
What about the people around him? I mean, we're so used to talking about, and I think it was an overstatement to talk about the Menino machine, although he did have, you know, support across the city. Is Marty Walsh kind of consolidating his support and picking up the support of others. I know there was some talk about this weekend because of the Democratic caucuses. Now, obviously, mayor is a nonpartisan race. He's not necessarily involved in that yet. Of course, everyone knows if you have the mayor on your side, it counts for a lot in the city of Boston. Absolutely. I mean, I think most of the candidates for governor are making sure that they're reaching out to him and trying to gather his support. And I would say that definitely watch the convention in June, the Democratic convention, to see kind of where his delegates go, and to see if who are they going to be backing, because that's a pretty good indicator of who he sees as someone aligned with his values and someone he believes can win, because he is a progressive, but he's also a pragmatist as well. Well, I think everybody, or at least I do, and I think a lot of people do think, he's a great guy, he's a really nice guy, but that's a tough business, and sometimes nice guys finish last. I'm thinking of George McGovern, and you didn't, that's before your time, who was a great guy, but, boy, he got, and he's not the first, he's not the last, and that, does he have the temperament for it? Because it's lots of times you have to say no, and you have to fire people, and you have to, make decisions that not everybody agrees with, and you got to be willing to kind of take the heat for that. And Marty, because you covered him as the state rep for Dorchester for however many years he was up there. I think it was a dozen or more. Does he have the temperament for this job in the long run? What do you think? I think that remains to be seen. I think his personality has always been as a, he likes pleasing people. He likes searching for that compromise and trying to leave as many people happy as possible. Doesn't always work out that way. And the job changes people. Power changes folks. So I think it's one of those things where it remains to be seen. Is he going to do it, or is he going to have one of his staffers do it? I don't know. That's to be continued. Well, and now let's jump to the present and the future. The race is on to replace him, and that's right. Something like 5 Democrats in that race? 5 Democrats are on the ballot. 5 Democrats in the race. I don't know if there's any Republicans or independents. How's that race developing? We'll be covering it here, I hope, in the weeks to come, although it's coming very quickly, isn't it? It is indeed. It's a March 4th primary, April 1st general election. Whoever basically wins the March 4th primary is going to... It's pretty much a Democratic seat, or traditionally has been. It has been. And there is no Republican on the ballot. There is a write-in candidate, Tony Dang, Vietnamese activist, although he told me over the weekend that he's considering dropping out and endorsing somebody. So there seems to be a fluid situation there. And I think overall it's a very strong field. You have Dan Hunt, used to work at Department of Conservation and Recreation. John O'Toole ran for City Council in 2011. Yeah. You have Liam Curran, comes out of the same union that Marty Walsh did. And Gene Gorman, he served on Walsh's transition team. And P.J. McCann, he works as a city attorney. So, I think you've got a solid mix of folks. And activists are. It's going to be a, I'd say 5,000, 6,000 turnout. 13th Suffolk, 13th if I recall correctly. It's interesting. Not that it's, but back when Marty won that seat, there was I think there were like at least 5 candidates in the field, and that was an incredibly strong field as well. I remember that race. Included Martha Coakley, and I think she finished 4th or something. 742 votes. Yes. Well, listen, read the Dorchester Reporter, read Gin Dumcius, but read his book. It's called The Way to City Hall, and it's an e-book for Kindle or Nook, whatever. There's the cover. You want to read this if you love politics. His take on the race, some of the best writing, in my opinion, all during the campaign. Again, I want to wish you my congratulations on your book. I hope you'll come back as we follow, we love to follow Dorchester politics, Marty Walsh, and how he does. You're watching Talk to the Neighborhoods here on the Boston Neighborhood Network. We're here tonight, and every Monday night at the same time we'll be back. The entire staff and crew here at BNN. I'm Joe Hesiler. Thanks for watching. Have a pleasant evening. Good night.